Hello and welcome to episode 6 of the Crimson Misery podcast. My name is Will Rainbolt. Hope you all are doing well beginning this Thanksgiving week. If you are listening to this pod on Spotify or Apple or wherever you get your podcast, consider giving the show 5 stars, giving a follow, and then if you're listening on YouTube, then subscribe and becoming a YouTuber, I suppose. Um, let's just get right into it. So a little bit of housekeeping here. This will be the only episode for this week, barring some sort of uh crazy game or crazy news story. This yeah, the because a lot of festivities are happening, a lot of people are going to be busy, so I figured this is just probably enough for now. So this will be kind of a mega episode, if you will. Let's get right into it with a little college football news before diving into a lot of college basketball action. Currently, simultaneously watching the Indiana North Carolina game, women's game, while I'm doing this. So if I sound a little distracted, that's probably why. I wish I could be recording this when I'm not watching the game, but I have a little bit to do today, so that's just probably why uh, I decided to do it here. And it's a little bit, yeah. So a lot of teams lost, as I mentioned in the bonus episode. If y'all didn't catch that, I will be doing some bonus episodes here and there. Um, a lot. I mean, in Indiana, I've already gone over their loss, but while I was recording the episode, Alabama was playing, Texas A&M was playing, and both of those teams lost. So the Alabama loss especially helps Indiana out quite a bit on the football side. But I wanted to give a little bit of a list for you all today. This is from one Aaron Murray. He was a former Georgia quarterback. If you all remember the prayer at Jordan Hare, the miracle at Jordan Hare, where Alabama, or not Alabama, Auburn, please don't crucify me, Auburn fans. Auburn had the game winning touchdown in the final minute, down by one. It was like a fourth down, and it was a tip pass. And immediately after that play happened, the camera cut to the sideline, and you could see like a Georgia player was like really just stunned at that. That was Aaron Murray. So this is a list that he ended up putting out yesterday. He now works for ESPN, SEC Network, whatever. It's the same thing at this point. He put out his top 12 teams, and it is one of the worst lists I've ever seen in my entire life. I know it's bait. I know he's just doing this for attention, and he's either really stupid or he is a soulless hack at ESPN who's telling him to make this sort of list, or he's both. Because this is inexcusable for a list like this to be published. All right, this is malpractice, literally. Um, and I wanted to just like dunk on this list because it's so bad, folks. It is so bad. So let's start. Okay, so the first three are pretty normal, I would say. His first three teams. So Oregon at number one, Ohio State at number two, Texas at three. That's about where what everyone has. That's what it should be. Okay, so he at least has that right. Notre Dame at four. Okay. All right. This is questionable, but I can see it. I mean, I know Notre Dame has the Northern Illinois loss. It's definitely not great, but also they've been playing really well since then. I would have probably put Penn State at four still, have it as it was, and then have Notre Dame at five. But I mean, I can at least see that. I mean, I'm not a Notre Dame apologist by any means. I still think they're gonna be like every other year where they get destroyed in the college football playoff or whatever bowl game they play in. But I can see putting Notre Dame above Penn State. So you'd think he'd have Penn State at number 5, right? Wrong. This is where the list really starts to fall off. Georgia at 5. Okay. Well, we are at least Aaron is an alumni who actually cares about his team. Uh, I'm gonna get to Heather Dinich in a minute. Oh my God, just saying that name makes my skin crawl. The SEC cult in general, though, is just oh man, it is something. They're rabid. That the SEC cult is just rabid, and it leads to stuff like this being paraded around and held up on a pedestal for ESPN and the SEC to it's literally just one and the same at this point. Um, by having people like this put out lists for their own bidding. They are like puppets in the sports world. You know how like there are lobbyists and different multinational corporations that allow allow the politicians that are doing their bidding to make laws in favor of them, and it's like this. It's like that exact same thing in the sports world. So he has Georgia at 5, which Georgia has 2 losses. Uh, Immediately makes me question why they're ahead of Penn State. Not that I am apologizing for Penn State by any means, but the college football playoff committee put Penn State well ahead of a lot of other teams. And to put Georgia ahead of that when they played a quote unquote powerhouse this week in UMass and did not play as well as they probably should have, to put them at 5 is very very interesting to say the least. I get he's an alumni. I know he's just doing this for bait. It's like I know better than to do this, but like I can't help myself. I literally cannot. And it's seriously just yeah. This man. All right. Let's get into the where the list really falls off. South Carolina at 6. Okay. Why is that a problem? Well, South Carolina has not really done a ton to get up there. They really haven't been too far in the college football playoff rankings. So why are they at 6? Well, they played Wofford, another football powerhouse, this past week. They're currently 16th. They have 2 losses to Ole Miss and Alabama and LSU. So they have 3 losses actually. So I believe they only had 2, but no, they have 3 losses. So this list automatically gets even worse. I mean, what are we doing here? What are we doing? LSU, who has 4 losses, Ole Miss, who got pounded by Florida, and Alabama, who I will get into in a moment. I'm I'm saving my little bit of energy for Alabama here. Um, South Carolina at 6, and then he has Penn State at number 7. How do you put South Carolina ahead of Penn State? How? That is that is malpractice. As again, this is unserious. This is completely unserious. How do you do that? How? This makes absolutely no sense. How do you put South Carolina ahead of Tennessee? I could see you putting Georgia ahead of Tennessee, but how do you put South Carolina ahead of Tennessee or Penn State? Tennessee he has at 8. How do you put them ahead of Miami? I look. I don't think Miami is all that it's cracked up to be, but they only have 1 loss, and on top of that, it, like they've at least put up a lot better offensive efforts than South Carolina has on the season against better competition. What are we doing? So, okay. Then he has SMU at 10. SMU again only with 1 loss on the season. Again, how you put South Carolina ahead of SMU, I don't know. Make it make sense. The SEC cult is it, it's literally driving me crazy. So, my God, this is terrible. Okay. And then the real kicker, Alabama at 11, Indiana at 12. Okay. In what world is Alabama ahead of Indiana at this current moment? Alabama now has three losses. Three. One. Ha 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 ha. Two. Ha ha ha. Three. Indiana has won. One loss to Ohio State. No, they did not play well. No, they did not. Their schedule has not been like their schedule has made it very easy for a lot of pundits to write their schedule off, write their um, strength of schedule, strength of record. I get it, but in no world is Alabama currently ahead of them. No, W- w- I that's not how it goes. Aaron Murray, you are clearly doing the SEC's bidding because obviously you are a part of that, and I, I'm I'm at a loss for words. I really am, and I it really like for these sorts of lists, and to be out there in the wild is it's depressing how much these lists and how much these people like Aaron Murray and then Heather Dinich are allowed to do this sort of thing. And then that leads me to her list where she puts uh, she she's an Indiana alum. She has been parading against her alum in Indiana, and she had a tweet where she was like, "That was a nice first half, Hoosiers," and it was like the the laughing, but also uh, like where you put your hand up to your face where you're like trying to not laugh. It was that emoji, and so people were rightfully dunking on her. Um, I just she's again doing the SEC's bidding. She's going on stuff like ESPN Bet to uh to parade why the SEC should have multiple teams in the field more than there should be, and it's disgusting. I mean, she at least has Indiana ahead of Alabama in this one, but she still has Bama in the playoff. They have three losses. They scored 3 points to a mediocre Oklahoma team. There is no way that they are anywhere close to a playoff spot. There should not be that world. Hell, I would like Arizona State. Okay, that team is a team that is deserving to be in a playoff spot over Alabama, and they might if they win the Big 12. But either way, regardless of that, they should be ahead of Alabama. Why aren't they? Oh, right, because they don't have the SEC next to their name. That's it. That's that's all it is. I why is this the case? There is no world in where Alabama at 8-3 deserves to be in the playoff. No way. And if they do make the playoffs, then especially over a team like Indiana, and especially if if Arizona State ends up not winning the Big 12, but again, they might. Um, even still, like the Big 12 is not good. Like I'm not saying that, but at least Arizona State is playing better than Alabama right now. Rank them ahead of Alabama. Like seriously, I'm so angry. I am so angry. Alabama has lost to Tennessee. They lost at Vanderbilt, who is mediocre at best. They are coming off a loss to Oklahoma where they scored 3 points. They looked worse than Indiana did. And I didn't think that was possible. And Indiana looked bad against the number 2 team in the country on the road. And Oklahoma is a mediocre team this season. And Alabama put up 3 points. I rest my case. That is oh man, I need to stop before I get a heart attack. Yeah. So Heather Dinich, Aaron Murray, the fact that ESPN has hired you all to do theirs and the FCC's bidding is a travesty. And it's like so far from the ESPN that I wanted to work at when I was younger. And now see them for who they really are. And it's just a bunch of another corrupt organization trying to get as much money in as possible and having dishonest reporting like this. It's we are such a stupid country. um, so anyway, let's get into some other action that happened. So uh, a lot of women's basketball talk. As I mentioned, I'm watching the Indiana North Carolina game. Indiana is down 6 at halftime. North Carolina, normally not a great 3-point shooting team, ended up hitting a lot of threes in the first half. So that was a bit uh, not fun to witness. So this let's get right into the big upset of the weekend. Um, UCLA upset North Carolina. Not only did they upset North Carolina, they blew them out. It's that was really shocking to watch. Multiple factors for this. So North Carolina, uh, or North Carolina. I'm still so focused on the uh, the North Carolina Indiana game. So UCLA had multiple scores in double figures, including Lauren Betts, who had 11 and 14, Gabriella Jaquez with 11, London Jones with 15, Kiki Rice with 11, and y- y- they just played so much more aggressively and had much more post presence, especially with Lauren Betts. Not even when she wasn't scoring, she was still impacting a lot of shots for South Carolina down low, which is something that you normally don't hear from a South Carolina team. Obviously, and people are pointing out to, hey, I mean, we don't have Camila Cardoso anymore. And yeah, maybe that's what was holding together their interior presence, both offensively and defensively, because without it, they just did not look that good. And for once, I mean, South Carolina looked bad. This was their first road loss since December of 2021, which is nearly 3 years later, and they finally had one. So Tahina Papau had a pretty good game with 18. Ashlyn Watkins is back. She had 8 and 4, but again, Tahina Papau was she and Tessa Johnson were the only ones in double figures for South Carolina, and this was something that really has not I mean, South Carolina fans are really concerned about Dawn Staley and her I guess feud. I don't know what even to say about it at this point with MiLaysia Fulwiley. Only played 3 minutes. MiLaysia Fulwiley was a was a wonderful freshman for South Carolina last year, and really, I mean, she was such an integral part to the winning the national championship last year. And even at the beginning of this year, she had some pretty good games against lesser competition, but still pretty good. And she only plays 3 minutes today. You would think, like, especially, down the stretch when South Carolina was trying to get back into it, you would think, oh, well, maybe Full Wiley's going to come back in. No, no. Instead, it was Raven Johnson starting ahead of her, who is not playing very well, and um, it was very strange. It was very strange to see. So people in the South Carolina world are calling on Fulwiley to maybe transfer. I'm not sure if I would go there yet, but if this continues, yeah, I would definitely consider that. That was just really crazy. And UCLA, the new AP poll is out, so UCLA is now at number one, and UConn at two. Yeah, this has been a wild year so far, and there may be still be an undefeated champion, but it will not be South Carolina this year. I mean, they still might win the championship, just not undefeated. Notre Dame moves up to three, so there is that. Oklahoma playing really well at 5-0. So there's a lot of teams that might make some noise here, and we'll see, man. A year where it might be more wide open than people think it is, especially if South Carolina continues to struggle and some of the better teams get knocked off, and maybe UConn does win the national title. You know, that could also shut me up about Paige Becker's not winning a title before she leaves college. Regardless of that, let's wrap up on some of the women's side action. I forgot to mention this earlier with Iowa State, with Audie Crook and what's her name? Her name. Yeah, Emily Ryan as well. With all of those players, they've been kind of struggling recently. So they won. They beat Drake by two, 80-78. But then earlier they lost to Northern Iowa, which was really surprising, 87-75. So they've fallen to 15th in the AP poll, and it's very strange. So maybe Iowa State isn't as good as we thought they were, but at the same time, it's still very early. There's a lot of time to get back into the swing of things. So that was probably the biggest upset aside from UCLA defeating South Carolina, and that's about all I have on that. So yeah, Oklahoma defeated UNLV. I already mentioned them, and Oklahoma is going to be playing DePaul next. That is the what tournament is that? It is It is a tournament. So yeah, the Ball Dogs Classic. So yeah, that'll be on Flow Sports again. Like, why, why? So they'll be facing the winner of Duke and Kansas State, which is a ranked matchup. Uh, like that's pretty good. Like whoever wins that one will be facing Oklahoma more than likely. Um, So that is definitely a tournament to watch out for on the women's side, the Ball Dogs Classic. Uh, Speaking of which, let's get into a lot of the men's side. So there are a ton, and I mean a ton of tournaments, more so than I can really cover. So if like I'm missing a tournament, an in-season tournament, um, let me know, and I apologize if I don't get to your team's tournament or I don't get to a specific one that you're interested in. I'm covering. I feel like I'm covering a lot of them. So let's before we do that, let's get into the AP poll, and I'm actually looking at the right chart this time. So no worries there. Uh, oh no, it has. I I thought it had updated. It apparently has not, because Arizona is still at 17, would not be at that. So, okay, so the men's side is not updated yet. So, yeah, let's just get right into the tournaments. So, Well, actually, first of all, let's start off with a couple of the results that happened from yesterday. I almost forgot to cover that. So, a couple of notable ones. Miami losing to VCU. I believe they lost all three of their games in their tournament, which kind of writes them off a little bit in the ACC. VCU gets a pretty solid win, even though Miami I don't think is that good. Um, that at least does prevent them from going 0-3 as well. So maybe I mean they were one of the favorites to win the Atlantic 10 this year. So we'll see what happens. Georgia beating St. John's in the Bahamas. So St. John's, after playing in the Baha Mar, stays in the Bahamas and then loses to Georgia, who is not a bad basketball team. Mike White has them playing at a good level, but that's still a surprising result. Zubi Ejiofor had 22 and 8. Um, Asa Newell had 18. Tyron Lawrence had 11 for Georgia. And that's again, that is a surprising result. Maybe St. John's was just a little too tired from the from the crazy game they had against Baylor and then Virginia. So playing 3 games in or yeah, 3 games in the Bahamas definitely is not great for a lot of stamina. So I, I I guess it shouldn't be as surprising that St. John's ended up losing, but at the same time, I mean, it goes to show that Georgia may also be a little bit of a dark horse in the SEC this year. So, but speaking of surprising, Kennesaw State defeated Rutgers. That is a very surprising result. Um, Dylan Harper had 21 for Rutgers, um, and then Ace Bailey had 17. But outside of that, they really didn't have a ton of scoring. Um, I mean, they had a pretty balanced bench, but at the same time, they allowed a Kennesaw State team to beat them. I know it was at Kennesaw State, but they were down 44-26 at halftime. They made a pretty good comeback effort in the second half, but still lost. So, or yeah, Rutgers losing that game definitely going to knock them out of the top 25. But that was definitely a a big surprise in for a Big Ten team looking to compete this year, losing on the road to to Kennesaw State. Mm, it's raises some eyebrows a little bit there. So, and then let's go to the Pittsburgh Wisconsin game. Again, Pittsburgh had a big lead at halftime. Well, actually, not a big. They had a big lead in the first half, but then led by 7, and then Wisconsin turned on the Jets and flew right by them. So Wisconsin, John Tonje, again, he right now this dude might be a sleeper pick for Big Ten Player of the Year. And the way he's playing, there's a good chance he might end up winning that award. 33 points, 10 out of 10 from the free throw line. This dude gets to the line a lot. 11 for 19 from the floor. And not not great games from guys that you'd expect, like Max Klesman and Stephen Crowell having been there for the line. John Blackwell with 14, Nolan Winter with 11, but John Tonje, the transfer from Missouri, he is playing out of his mind right now. And so if I'm a voter for the Big Ten Player of the Year, I'm looking at John Tonje and saying right now this dude is my pick for Big Ten Player of the Year. Or at the very least, he's one of them. I mean, you could no one for Indiana is playing that well. I mean, I mean, obviously, preseason you could say Mackenzie Mbako, but no one is playing as well as John Tonje, especially with Wisconsin playing against pretty good competition because Pittsburgh's no joke either. They had a again, a really great game to start, but then they sort of fell apart. Um, and yeah, so it's just it is. if you're a Wisconsin fan, I'm feeling really good about this team right now. 19th in the country. You'd think they're moving up after the week they just had. And I again, John Tanjay, player of the year in the Big Ten right now. I don't think there's um uh, we'll have to see how the season shakes out, but at the same time, right now, that is who I would select as player of the year in the Big Ten. So, anywho, let's go on to the in-season tournaments. So, let's start off with the noted Arizona tip-off with Butler playing Northwestern, Mississippi State playing UNLV. That is the Cactus Division. The Desert Division is Bowling Green, New Mexico State, Pepperdine, and Weber State. So in the Desert Division, Pepperdine, sure. But the Cactus Division, I think Butler has lost a couple games that they probably should have won, especially to Austin P at home, and that has definitely had their season in kind of a or no, do they only have one loss? No, they only have one loss. My bad. So yeah, they lost by Austin P. But again, Austin P may not be that bad of a basketball team. So, but again, against Northwestern, I think overall Mississippi State wins this tournament. I think it'll be Mississippi State and Butler. I think Butler does end up beating Northwestern, but at the same time, we'll see. I mean, um, so yeah, Butler may not be as bad as I initially gave them credit for. So that's the Arizona tip off. And then let's go to the ESPN events one, which has Minnesota against Wichita State, and then Florida against Wake Forest. I think Florida, regardless of the Todd Golden situation, I think Florida does end up beating Wake Forest. And then the Minnesota Wichita State game is definitely a bit more intriguing for me because Wichita State has not lost yet. And then Minnesota, they have that loss to North Texas. But I think it depends really on how good you games you get from guys like Dawson Garcia and Parker Fox. Those guys, if they play well, I think Minnesota definitely wins. If not, Wichita State can definitely take advantage of a very lackluster Minnesota team. Um, but again, Minnesota has the talent to win. I'll just default to the Big Ten team, Minnesota. I got Minnesota winning. I think it'll be Minnesota, Florida, and then I think Florida wins. Um, and then we have the NIT tip off, which is definitely, it seems like just a few years ago, like not a few years ago, but like 10 years ago, that the NIT tip off was more important than it was. I remember Michigan when they had, Trey Burke and Nick Stauskas playing there. And then the next year, I believe it was Arizona Duke in the championship game. Uh, because you have Utah State and St. Bonaventure, and then Northern Iowa and North Texas. So Utah State's had a pretty good run here, like recently in recent seasons. So I guess it would be that I could maybe uh I because again, this is I mean neutral court, so a lot of that is taken out of consideration. But St. Bonaventure's has had a pretty solid start to the year, especially in recent games. They have not lost yet, so they are 6-0. So yeah, I mean for the Atlantic 10 to have a good season, you want to have a have a tournament like this for if you're St. Bonaventure. Um, yeah, I'm picking St. Bonaventure. Yeah, I think they will win the NIT tip-off. And let's go onward and upward, I suppose. All right, so the next one is the Sunshine Slam, the Thumbtack Sunshine Slam, to be specific. Got to get that corporate uh, endorsement there. Um, but no, we have Penn State and Fordham, and we have Clemson and San Francisco. San Francisco, a pretty good dark horse. I mean, they did lose to Memphis, but at the same time, um, they they're I feel like they're pretty good. So I gotta go with not Memphis. They're playing in the next tournament that I will get into. Um, so yeah, I think San Francisco definitely has the edge in this. Maybe you have a team like Penn State trying to get itself going. Um, yeah, I think it'll be San Francisco versus Penn State. I think if I had to predict, I think San Francisco wins. I think San Francisco beats Penn State and they win the Sunshine Slam. And then that is the beach um, section. And then that was a sneeze. Okay. On the ocean uh, segment, you have Radford, Chicago State, Drexel, and Purdue Fort Wayne. Let's just go Purdue Fort Wayne. Um, so now let's go to the Maui, where Memphis finally, I get to Memphis. I was looking at that bracket, like kind of looking ahead. And I gotta say, this is really intriguing right now. This is really intriguing to look at because you have Memphis and UConn. I think, oh man, Colorado, Michigan State. As much as Michigan State has not looked as good as they've had in the past, Michigan State probably wins. As much as I want to pick Memphis to pull off the upset, I really do. I just, I just don't see it happening. I just don't see it happening. Yeah, UConn. Sorry, Memphis fans. But I will say I am rooting for Memphis. I want Memphis to win, but I'm picking UConn. So if I that's the route you go in life because you're a winner regardless. So if you're rooting for a team and they win, then you're happy. But if your pick wins and I'm picking UConn, then you're also happy. There you can't lose. You cannot lose. So I think it'll be UConn and Michigan State, and then on the other side you have Auburn and Iowa State. Oh my God, that is an incredible matchup, top five matchup, and oh man, mm, that is a tough one. I will pick North Carolina over Dayton. Man, but then oh man, Auburn, the Auburn. Oh man, I don't know. I'm like going back and forth between teams. Um, Yeah, Auburn. Even though they've had, some turmoil with Bruce Pearl and whatnot, shocker. Um, they played against Houston really well, and they've just looked really good overall. And so I think unless Iowa State has a really good game, I think Auburn ends up winning that one. So then it'll be Auburn versus North Carolina. I think Auburn wins that game, and then UConn defeats Michigan State. So I think it'll be UConn and Auburn in the championship, and then I think mm, let's have some fun. Let's pick Auburn. Let's just do it. Why not? It's like the if I whichever one I'll pick is going to be the one that ends up losing. So let's just have some fun and pick Auburn. So that means UConn will win the Maui, but I'm picking Auburn regardless. So that is my prediction for the Maui Invitational, and then let's move on to the Fort Myers tip off. So you have Michigan against Virginia Tech, and then you have South Carolina versus Xavier. Could be big for the Big East to have Xavier win a tournament like this, but I think South Carolina is just better than Xavier, at least from what I've seen thus far of teams this season. even though South Carolina did not look great against Indiana. Um, but I think South Carolina ends up winning, and then I think Michigan defeats Virginia Tech. I think this would be a great way for Dusty May to start his Michigan season with winning an in-season tournament, and then I think Michigan does end up beating South Carolina to win the Fort Myers tip-off. So that is my prediction, and obviously I'm defaulting for the Big Ten, but I'm part of the Big Ten cult, not the SEC cult. Get it right. Um, but regardless, so then what was I gonna? Oh yeah, so Purdue plays against North Carolina State. Which tournament do they play in? Yeah, it's Purdue and North Carolina State. They play. There are a couple other. I can't. This has been like one of the tournaments that I cannot find like any information on. It's really strange. Where okay, so I'll just pick Purdue to win that one and move on because there's just like I know they're playing in a tournament, but like I can't seem to find like any information about it. It's like a very cryptic uh site where the bracket is. So anyway, I'm just gonna move on and not worry about that and just say that Purdue's gonna win. So great podcasting here, Will. Really great stuff. So, again, rate the show 5 stars if you're if you're so inclined to. Let's go to the battle for Atlantis. This will be the final bracket that I end up covering because I do have some stuff to take care of. So, Louisville and Indiana. There's a reason why I picked this one last, or I saved this one for last. So, it starts on November 27th at noon on ESPN. I I could if Indiana plays the way they did against UNC in Greensboro, they're not winning this game. But I think they'll play a little better. I think Louisville will be fine, at least better than they were during the Kenny Payne death years. Um, but I think Indiana wins. I'm feeling pretty confident about that. And then West Virginia, Gonzaga, Gonzaga. I don't think I need to explain myself much there. Oklahoma, Providence. I'm gonna go with Providence. I think that uh, Kim English in his second season at the helm of Providence, I think will be very. Will be looking to win a couple of these games here in the Bahamas, and I think this will be a really good start. So, and again, it depends a lot on what Bryce Hopkins does. I keep wanting to say Bryce Cotton, and he played at Providence like 10 years ago, but like I stopped myself. I said the right Bryce Hopkins, and yeah. So then Arizona Davidson, man, I was gonna like pick Arizona, like no doubt, but do I do it? Do I do it? I'm gonna go. I want to see some chaos. I'm rooting for Davidson, and I think it's going to be a closer game than people think it'll be because Arizona has not played very well as of late. I I'm gonna go with Davidson. Let's do it. Let's pick some chaos here. I'm smiling because it's like I want there to be some teams that advance in these types of tournaments that don't normally get to. So I think it'll be Davidson versus Providence. Let's go. Let's go. So yeah, Davidson, the Steph Curry Warriors will face the Providence Friars. And as much as I want to pick Davidson again, I think Providence wins that game. And then even if Davidson or Arizona wins, I think Providence ends up making it to the championship game. I just think Arizona. I mean, they could have a bounce back. You never know, but they just don't look very good. They didn't look good against Wisconsin. They didn't look good against Duke, and I just it's hard for me to pick them right now. It's like I need to get some sort of like they need to prove to me that they can like win these sorts of games in order for me to like trust them again. But again, under Tommy Lloyd, they've lost games, especially um, against Princeton, uh, getting upset the 15-2, and then last year they lost to Clemson, and they're just underachieving right now, and it's even more so than under the Sean Miller years where they at least made the Elite Eight 3 times. So anyway, for any Arizona fans listening, I apologize for kind of uh, pouring it on Arizona, but I mean until they start winning, it's going to take me a bit to pick them uh, to win games more. So West Virginia, Gonzaga already picked. So I already picked the top half. So then if it all shakes out like that, Indiana versus Gonzaga. Uh, as much as I want to pick Indiana, I just think Gonzaga has too much size and too much. They have too much going for them. So I'm picking Gonzaga, even though I would want Indiana to win that. But I think Indiana does win the third place game against whoever they end up facing there. And then it'll be Gonzaga versus Providence. I think, as much as I want to pick Providence, I think that's where their run ends up ending. So I think I'll pick Gonzaga. So I'll pick Gonzaga to win the battle for Atlantis. Just think they have way too much size, way too much talent. That's who I will be going with here. Um, Again, it'd be fine. I obviously rooting for my Indiana Hoosiers, but again, like what I said before, if you are rooting for a team and they win, great. If you pick the other team and they win, you can't lose. Even though it might suck that your favorite team is losing, then it's like, yeah, at least I picked one for the analytics and the analysis of the situation. I'm very smart. This I'm winning regardless, actually. So that is the Bat Boy Mowers Battle for Atlantis. Thank you. You should be thanking me actually, Bad Boy Mowers. I'm just saying. I'm floating you out there. A little bit of an update. North Carolina is blowing out Indiana is without Sidney Parrish in this game. So whatever. I'm just gonna do some other stuff while I not pay attention. The at least beat Baylor, so they're on a little bit better of a track. But again, North Carolina is going to be a very good contender for the ACC this season. So, oh, that's an offensive foul. Yes, thank you. Okay, it's 45-30, and yeah, I'm a little bit behind actually. Okay, well, it doesn't matter. It's the same result. Okay. With that being said, I think that will be all I have for you all today. Again, this is the only episode this week unless something ends up happening, like some news or a surprising result ends up happening. Just have a lot going on this week, especially with it being Thanksgiving. So I want to block out some time to, help my family with stuff and on all that. So, again, thank you all so much for listening. If you enjoyed, rate the podcast 5 stars, give me a like and subscription on YouTube. You can tell your friends about the pod if you like hearing uh, sneezes and having brain fog because you're too distracted with Indiana playing like ass. So, and then you can also email the pod at crimsonmiserypod@gmail.com. You can also follow me on Twitter at WillAJRainbolt and on Blue Sky as well, same handle. And then Crim Misery Pod on Twitter and Blue Sky as well, if you would like to follow the pod on social media. Please do so. I'm a struggling content creator. It would mean the world for me if you would do this. It would be so helpful. So that sounded like a cross between High Five Ghost from regular show and then Herbert the Pervert from Family Guy. I don't know what that voice exactly was, but it was an attempt. All right. Well, again, appreciate y'all watching. Have a wonderful rest of your Thanksgiving week. I hope you have a wonderful Thanksgiving with wonderful festivities. Be thankful for those who are in your life who make you very happy. And I will obviously be doing the same. I'm very fortunate for um, where I am now, and I am appreciative of those who are watching the pod, who are supporting me. And yeah, so I appreciate you all again. So thanks again for listening and have a wonderful rest of your week. Bye bye.